And so, the question is never whether DEI was effective or non-effective or whether it should exist. The question is whether leaders and systems can hold something long enough for something better to emerge. And I fundamentally believe that, based on the research, if we start using some of these belonging concepts, we can actually bridge the gap between our DEI, our culture, and the bottom line. And so, even if you look at some of the original research on that, which goes back to like the structure of scientific revolutions back in 1962,
Wow. Way before I was born.
but some of these concepts, they're not new. It's just that it takes a while for a new paradigm to emerge, and I can see where the tension is here, not because it's bad. The tension is here because conflict allows us to take things deeper and understand from a deeper lens. And so if we come back to the original goal of understanding, and in Canada, we actually need to be calling it IDEA, inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, because accessibility
change the name
in Canada,
altogether.
We should.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it the first time on this channel.
Well, I advocate for that because if you look at how much our technology has changed and how much accessibility could actually be impacted by hiring people who have accessibility needs, you could actually be filling a gap that actually is a win for the accessibility person, the organization, and then also the country as a whole. And so when you look at those elements, the name change is actually something that could very much support the ability for people to move through things. And I think that there's a negative connotation right now with DEI based on what's happening in the US as well. And unfortunately, Canadians follow suit. And so I'd like to believe that, Canada won't become as polarized. However, in our politics, we see elements of it. And so it's looking at ways to bring people together versus looking at ghosting or cancel culture. And that piece is the piece that's actually taking us out of being productive and taking us out of our speed. I'll give you an example of this. So when somebody feels like they're not valued, somebody feels like, oh, that person doesn't care what I have to say. What ends up happening is they get quiet and they start to hoard information. And they do that because they're like, well, so-and-so was, mean to me, or so-and-so did this to me, or so-and-so is not inviting me to the meetings, or whatever the conflict is. And instead of getting back together, which is what radical candor was trying to do years ago, what ended up happening was that critique, that feedback was actually what people stopped being able to listen to. And so instead of going back and repairing, I'm sorry, I left you out of the meeting, or, this or that happened. When fitting in is the model, resentment and there's actually studies that show this. Resentment is what starts. Loneliness is what comes next. And if it continues, it can actually lead to either aggression or even acts of violence.